I buried my best friend alive in the backyard of our old family cabin up in the Wisconsin woods, her screams muffled by the damp earth and my unyielding hands, all because she sold me out to the feds for a plea deal that never came. But that wasn't the worst part. My husband, the golden boy principal of our crumbling Chicago public school, had been pulling the strings the whole time, framing me for embezzlement to cover his own dirty affairs with the PTA moms. And the kid who watched it all unfold from the shadows, the one I dismissed as a lost cause because he couldn't utter a single word, he didn't just witness my unraveling. He became the ghost who dragged me back from the brink, forcing me to choose between vengeance and the hollow shell of redemption. My name is Elizabeth Harper, and if you'd told me 5 years ago that I'd be staring down the barrel of a federal indictment for stealing lunch money from inner-city kids, I'd have laughed in your face over a lukewarm IPA at our neighborhood dive bar on Division Street. Back then, I was the queen of Lincoln High, the no-nonsense English teacher who could turn a room full of gangbanger wannabes into reluctant Shakespeare enthusiasts with nothing but a chalkboard and a death glare. Chicago's South Side wasn't forgiving, bullet holes and playground slides, kids packing heat before they packed lunches, but I thrived on the chaos. It was raw, real, the kind of American grit that made you feel alive, even if it chipped away at your soul one red-inked essay at a time. That all shattered on a muggy September morning in 2023, when the feds kicked in my apartment door on the edge of Wrigleyville, the Cubs' distant cheers from Wrigley Field mocking me through the blinds. I was mid-sip of my black coffee, scrolling through lesson plans on my cracked iPhone, when 6 suits in windbreakers stormed in, badges flashing like bad omens. "Elizabeth Harper, you're under arrest for wire fraud and embezzlement," the lead agent barked, his voice all Midwestern flatness, like he was reading off a grocery list. My husband, Mark, the silver-tongued principal with the all-American jawline and a smile that could charm a nun, stood behind them in the hallway, arms crossed, looking like he'd just lost his favorite golf club. I didn't cry. Not then. I spat back. "This is bullshit. Ask Mark, he handles the books." "But Mark?" He averted his eyes, mumbling something about cooperating with the investigation, while the agents cuffed me, the cold steel biting into my wrists like a promise of worse to come, as they dragged me past our framed wedding photo. Us on a Lake Michigan beach, wind-whipped and grinning like idiots. I caught his gaze finally, and in that split second, I saw it. The flicker of relief. He'd sold me out. Clean. The betrayal hit like a South Side winter, bone-deep and unrelenting. Mark and I had met at a teachers' union rally in Springfield back in 2015, back when Illinois was drowning in pension scandals, and we were young idealists fighting the man. He was the rising star, fresh from Northwestern with an MBA and dreams of reforming the system from within. I was the gritty lit major from UIC, passionate about stories that mattered, the ones about kids clawing their way out of the projects. We bonded over late-night tacos at Big Star, whispering about changing the world one underfunded classroom at a time. Marriage followed in a shotgun courthouse ceremony, honeymoon in the Smokies, and then the grind. Lincoln High, where the hallways smelled of bleach and regret, and the kids? God, the kids. They were my anchor. Even when Mark started climbing the ladder, schmoozing with school board suits at fundraisers, I'd skip to grade papers. But secrets fester in marriages like mold in a leaky basement. I'd known about his flings, whispers from the lounge about him, and that PDA vixen, Carla Ruiz, the one with the spray tan and the real estate side hustle. I'd ignored it, chalking it up to stress, the kind that comes from balancing budgets on a shoestring while CPS threatened to shutter the doors. What I didn't know? The money. Mark had been skimming from the after-school programs, funneling cash into a slush fund for his consulting gigs, code for bribes to keep the board off his back about test scores. When the auditors got too close, he needed a patsy. Enter me, the loyal wife, the one who'd signed the joint accounts without a second thought. Jail was a blur of fluorescent hell. Cook County, where the coffee tasted like regret and the guards eyed you like fresh meat. I sat in a holding cell that first night, replaying every red flag. The late nights at board meetings, the new Rolex that didn't match his $85,000 salary, the way he'd gaslight me into doubting my own memory. "You're paranoid, Liz," he'd say, pouring me a glass of cheap Malbec. "It's the job. We're in this together." Together. The word curdled in my gut now. My lawyer, a harried public defender named Ruiz, unrelated to Carla, thank Christ, pulled me aside during arraignment. They've got emails, Liz. Forged, maybe, but it looks bad. Your signature on transfers to offshore accounts. Forged. That word ignited something feral in me, a spark in the dark. Mark had done this. My own husband. The father of our ghost child we'd lost to miscarriage years back. The man who'd vowed, in sickness and health, under those stained glass windows in St. Ignatius. He'd buried me to save his skin. But the real knife twist came from Jenna, my best friend since undergrad, the wild child artist who'd crashed on my couch more times than I could count, the one who'd held my hand through the DNC and the endless fertility docs. Jenna worked as a bookkeeper for a nonprofit downtown, but she'd moonlighted for Mark's side projects. Turns out, she'd been the one to tip the feds, whispering about discrepancies in exchange for immunity. Why? Because Mark had dirt on her, an old coke habit from her club kid days, photos he'd found during a drunken hookup. She'd cracked under pressure, selling me out to save herself. It was you or me, Liz, she sobbed when I confronted her via smuggled phone call from lockup. He said you'd never go down for it, that it was just to scare the auditors. Scare them. Right. I hung up, my hands shaking, vowing then and there. If I walked out of this, heads would roll. Not with an axe. Chicago wasn't that theatrical, but with the slow, surgical precision of a woman scorned. Revenge isn't a sprint. It's a marathon through the Lakeview fog, one calculated step at a time. Bail was a joke, $250K I didn't have. So I rotted for 3 months, my classroom handed off to some perky sub from the suburbs who probably thought The Outsiders was a Netflix flick. Lincoln High became a distant hum, but one face lingered in my fever dreams, Tommy Ruiz. Yeah, same last name as Carla, but no relation, just cosmic irony. Tommy was my mute kid, a lanky 16-year-old sophomore with eyes like storm clouds and a sketchbook glued to his hip. Transferred in from juvie mid-year. Rumor had it his silence stemmed from a home invasion gone wrong. Throat slashed, voice box nicked, but he wouldn't talk about it. Or anything. He sat in the back, doodling demons while the class butchered Hamlet, and I'd sigh, marking him absent in spirit if not body. I thought he was broken goods, a statistic waiting to happen. Tommy, you gonna join us, or just haunt the room? I'd quip, earning snickers from the peanut gallery. He'd stare, unblinking, then scribble something vicious on his pad, usually a caricature of me as a hag with fangs, and shove it under my nose. I dismissed it as defiance, the South Side special. Little did I know, those scribbles were his confessions, his maps to the underworld I was about to tumble into. Parole hearing came on a drizzly November afternoon, the kind where Lake Michigan whips up gray waves that mirror your mood. Mark testified. Oh, the irony, painting me as the stress provider who'd snapped under pressure. The judge, a grizzled vet with a Bears lanyard, bought it hook, line, and sinker. House arrest, community service, and a plea to misdemeanor fraud. I walked out in a fog, Ubering back to his apartment, where the locks had been changed. A duffel of my clothes waited on the stoop, topped with a note, for the best. Therapy, Liz. Therapy. From the man who'd scripted my downfall. I burned the note in the sink, the acrid smoke curling like a middle finger to the sky. That night, alone in an extended stay on Halstead, I cracked open my laptop, seized evidence returned, minus the incriminating files, and started digging. Mark's digital trail was sloppy, deleted emails to Jenna, wire transfers masked as scholarships, even a burner phone log to Carla's salon. But the real gold? A hidden folder on our shared drive, buried under vacation pics, blueprints for the skim, with my initials forged in pixel-perfect script. Jenna's address popped up next, Logan Square walk-up, artsy and overpriced. I drove there at dawn, the city stirring like a hungover beast, and waited in the shadows of her stoop. When she emerged, bundled in a parka, juggling a yoga mat and a soy latte, I stepped out, voice low and lethal. We need to talk, traitor. She froze, latte spilling like blood on the concrete. Liz, save it. You're coming with me. I grabbed her arm, not hard enough for bruises, but firm enough to promise pain. We ended up at the old cabin, my family's relic from Grandpa's logging days, 2 hours north where the pines whispered secrets and the lake lapped like forgotten sins. Jenna babbled the whole drive, Mark's threats, her fear, how she tried to back out, but he had the photos. He said it was victimless. Just shuffling numbers. Victimless. Tell that to the kids whose art programs got axed. By the time we hit the dirt road, rage boiled in my veins, hot as moonshine. I dragged her inside, the cabin creaking like a coffin lid, and tied her to the antique oak chair with extension cords from the trunk. Why me, Jenna? After everything. Tears streamed, mascara rivers. Because you're strong, Liz. You always bounce back. Me? I'd shatter. She begged, offered money, alibis, anything. But as the sun dipped, painting the walls bloody, I saw Mark's face in hers, the liar, the user. You buried me, I whispered, grabbing the shovel from the shed. Now it's your turn. The earth was soft from autumn rains, a shallow grave by the birch grove where we'd once roasted marshmallows on girls' weekends. She screamed as I pushed the first shovelful over her kicking legs, please turning to gargled sobs. No gun, no blade, just dirt, the ultimate American equalizer. As the mound grew, I felt it. Not catharsis, but a hollow echo. Was this justice or just another layer of my own grave? That's when the headlights pierced the dusk, tires crunching gravel like bones. Panic surged. Mark? Cops. I dropped the shovel, heart hammering, and bolted inside for the .38 Grandpa kept under the floorboards. But as I chambered around, a figure slipped through the door, slight, silent, sketchbook in hand. Tommy Ruiz, my mute ghost, eyes wide but steady, pointing to the window where Jenna's muffled cries seeped from the yard. He scribbled furiously, "Stop. It's a trap." Tommy's arrival at the cabin was like a glitch in my revenge matrix. Unscripted, inexplicable, the kind of plot twist that makes you question if life's scripted by some sadistic Hollywood hack. There he stood in the doorway, all gangly limbs and faded Blackhawks hoodie, the chill wind ruffling his unkempt brown hair. No words, just that frantic scribble on his pad. "Stop. It's a trap." I lowered the .38, barrel still warm from my grip, my breath ragged in the stale cabin air that smelled of pine sap and betrayal. "What the hell are you doing here, kid?" I hissed, glancing out the grimy window where the mound over Jenna quivered faintly, like a heartbeat under soil. Tommy didn't flinch. He flipped the page, his pencil a blur. "Tracked you from school logs. Mark's burner pinged here. He's coming with feds. Framed you deeper." Framed deeper. The words landed like a sucker punch. I'd underestimated this boy. Hell, I'd written him off as a mute cipher, a kid too damaged to decode the world, let alone my unraveling one. Tommy Ruiz, foster kid, juvie alum for boosting cars in Pilsen, silent since that home invasion at 12 where his mom's boyfriend turned the knife on him during a meth-fueled rage. The docs said his vocal cords were scarred, but the shrinks? They pegged it as selective mutism, trauma's cruel lockdown. In class, he'd zone out, sketching horrors that'd make Bosch blush. Faceless men in suits devouring children, cars exploding into fireworks skulls. I'd scanned them once, sighed, and handed back an F. "Art's not English, Tommy. Try reading instead." Now, those sketches felt prophetic. He jabbed the pad again, Jenna's phone. "I hacked it. She called Mark after you grabbed her. He's spinning it as kidnapping. Cops en route." Kidnapped my ass. But the kid had a point. My prints on the cords, the grave half dug? It'd seal me as the psycho X, not the victim. I untied the .38 safety, mind racing. "How'd you hack her? And why the hell do you care?" Tommy's eyes, those storm-gray depths, softened for a split second, then hardened. He yanked up his sleeve, revealing a faded tattoo, a barcode, inmate ink from Statesville youth. "Scribble. Taught myself code in lockup. Boredom's a bitch. You gave me 1984 last year. Saw the surveillance in it. Like school. Like Mark." Mark. The principal who'd mentored Tommy after his transfer, assigning him to my homeroom with a wink. "Liz'll fix him. She's got that magic touch." Magic touch, right. More like I'd been too buried in my own marital minefield to notice the kid mirroring it. Tommy had seen the power plays. Mark's closed-door counseling sessions with vulnerable girls. The way he'd dock pay for attitude from teachers who questioned his budgets. And me? The oblivious enabler, signing off on expense reports while chugging boxed wine. Sirens wailed in the distance, faint but closing like wolves on a scent. "No time for therapy hour. We gotta move," I said, grabbing Jenna's phone from the table. Screen cracked. Last call to Mark, timestamp 20 minutes ago. Tommy nodded, bolting to the back room where Grandpa's old Ford Bronco rusted under a tarp. We unearthed it like a relic from Raiders, the engine coughing to life on the third try, diesel fumes choking the air. Jenna's cries grew frantic as we passed the grave. Guilt gnawed. Had I gone too far? She was a snake. Yeah, but burying her alive? That was the line between justice and monster. Tommy paused at the mound, shovel in hand, and started digging. Silent fury in every scoop, dirt flying like accusations. I joined him, blisters be damned, until her gasping face emerged, caked in mud, eyes wild. You saved me, she wheezed, coughing soil. Tommy cut her cords with a pocket knife, but his glare said don't test it. We bundled her into the Bronco's bed, trussed like a Thanksgiving turkey, and peeled out as blue lights flickered on the horizon. The chase was a blur, backroads twisting through Chequamegon Nicolet, the Bronco's shocks screaming over ruts, radio crackling with dispatch chatter. Suspect vehicle, older Ford, heading north on 13. Possible hostage. Hostage. The word twisted the knife. Mark was painting me as the villain, the jilted wife gone Bonnie Parker. Jenna whimpered from the back. He's got everything, Liz. Videos, alibis. He'll bury us both. Videos. Plural. My stomach dropped. What else had he hoarded? Our bedroom cams. The miscarriage fights where I'd screamed about his affairs. Tommy drove, steady hands on the wheel, eyes flicking to the mirrors like a getaway pro. I rode shotgun, phone glued to my ear, speed dialing my lawyer. Voicemail. Ruiz here. Call me back. It's urgent. No shit. We ditched the Bronco at a truck stop near Hurley, Wisconsin, hitching a ride with a grizzled logger hauling pulpwood. He eyed Jenna's mudcake face, but said nothing. Midwest code for mind your business. By midnight, we holed up in a no-tell-motel off I-90, the kind with vibrating beds and walls thin as regrets. That's when Tommy spilled, sort of. He commandeered the motel's ancient desktop in the office, bribed the clerk with Jenna's latte cash, fingers flying over keys as he pulled up an encrypted drive. Screenshots flooded the screen. Mark's emails to board members, promising kickbacks, chat logs with Carla about Liz's little breakdowns, and buried deepest, a file marked collateral. Inside, forged docs pinning not just the skim on me, but an old hit-and-run from 2018. Mark's Escalade clipping a pedestrian in a snowstorm, me taking the DUI plea to protect him because we're family, Liz. Blood's thicker. Blood. The miscarriage flashed. Our unborn son, gone at 16 weeks, Mark at the conference in Vegas with Carla. I'd shouldered that grief alone, just like the plea. You knew? I whispered to Tommy, who nodded solemnly, adding, saw the file when he tutored me. Used it to threaten Jenna. She's clean now, deleted her tip. Jenna, curled on the bed, sobbed. I didn't know about the hit and run. God, Liz, forgive me. Forgive? The word tasted like ash. But Tommy's eyes pleaded. Use it. Flip the script. Dawn broke, gray and unforgiving. The three of us plotting in that Fleabag room like outlaws in a Coen Brothers flick. Revenge 2.0. Leak the files anonymously. Tip the real feds. Watch Mark's empire crumble from the shadows. But as sirens howled closer, Mark's tip-off, no doubt. Tommy grabbed my arm, scribbling one last line. Trust me. One more play. We fled south, Jenna spilling more beans. Mark safe in the principal's office, stuffed with cash and that damn video drive. The plan crystallized. Infiltrate Lincoln High during winter break, crack the safe, expose it all. But Mark? He'd smell the rat. The man was a chameleon, flipping from charmer to tyrant with a smile, berating teachers in private, then glad-handing parents at pep rallies. Controversial decisions? Like cutting special ed to fund his leadership retreats, or suspending kids for gang affiliation based on hoodies alone. No one right, no one wrong. Just survival in the edgelands of American public schooling. Back in Chicago by Christmas Eve, the city a neon fever dream of lights and loneliness, we crashed at Tommy's foster aunt's, a no-questions-asked setup in back of the yards, where the air hung heavy with stockyard ghosts. Jenna ghosted us there, promising to go straight, but I saw the lie in her eyes. Tommy and I prepped. Blueprints from his hacks, bolt cutters for the vents, my old master key still valid because bureaucracy moves like molasses. New Year's Eve, confetti choking the loop, we breached Lincoln High under cover of fireworks. The halls echoed empty, lockers like silent sentinels. Mark's office, door ajar, desk lamp glowing. He was there, silhouette against the window, nursing bourbon, phone to ear. Yeah, Carla, she's vanished. But the story's gold, crazy wife, kidnapping plot. Hero principal saves the day. My blood iced. Tommy tugged me back, but rage propelled me forward. I burst in, .38 drawn low. Miss me, honey? Mark whirled, glass shattering. No fear, just that politician's grin. Liz. Knew you crawl back. Feds are outside. Your little joyride ends now. He nodded to the window, where squad cars idled like sharks. Tommy. He melted into the vents, a shadow ninja. Mark lunged for the panic button, but I fired a warning shot into the ceiling, plaster raining like confetti. The files, Mark. The hit and run. Jenna sang like a canary. His laugh was oil slick. Jenna? That junkie. No one believes her over me. And you, shooting up your old school? You're done. He circled, eyes gleaming with the thrill of the hunt. The man who'd once proposed with a Cubs ticket stub now debating my fate like a merger. Then, chaos. Alarms blared. Vince exploded with Tommy crashing down, laptop in hand. Live streaming the safe's contents to every school board email, Twitter, the local CBS affiliate. Cash bundles, flash drives. That damning dashcam clip of the Escalade's taillights vanishing into snow. A body crumpling, unseen. Mark's face drained to chalk. You little shit, he swung at Tommy, fist connecting with a sick thud. The kid crumpled, blood from his lip, but not before hitting send. The world ignited, notifications pinging, distant shouts from halls as reporters, Tommy's bot army, swarmed. I leveled the gun at Mark's chest. Your move, principal. The standoff in Mark's office stretched eternity thin, the air thick with cordite and the metallic tang of blood from Tommy's split lip. Outside, the south side night pulsed, sirens converging like a blues fest gone wrong, news vans screeching up with their satellite dishes blooming like mechanical flowers. Mark stood frozen, hands half raised, that chameleon mask cracking into something raw, not remorse, but cornered rat cunning. Liz, put it down. Think of the kids. This isn't you. The kids. Always his shield, the ultimate American deflection. Invoke the innocent to cloak the guilty. But Tommy groaned from the floor, clutching his side, and something primal snapped in me. This boy, the one I'd labeled unteachable, had just torched Mark's kingdom with code and courage, while I'd been too busy nursing grudges to notice his fire. It is me, I said, thumb cocking the hammer. The me you buried under your lies. He lunged, not for me, but the desk drawer, yanking a Beretta I'd forgotten he kept there, a gift from his cop uncle. The room detonated, muzzle flashes stitching the air, bookshelves splintering like matchsticks. I dove behind the credenza, bullets whining past, one grazing my shoulder in a hot kiss of pain. Tommy scrambled, grabbing a bust of Lincoln, irony's cruel jester, and hurled it at Mark's knees. The principal buckled, cursing his shot wild. I popped up, firing twice, center mass, no hesitation. Mark slumped against the window, crimson blooming on his crisp Oxford shirt, eyes locking mine in a final, wordless plea. Why? But I knew. Because monsters like him don't change, they adapt, flipping faces until the mask is all that's left. He slid down, glass shattering behind him, the city lights framing his fall like a bad noir poster. Cops burst in seconds later, SWAT in tack vests, barking drop it. But Tommy was already waving his pad, self-defense. Check the stream. The live feed had gone viral. Lincoln High scandal trending, board members' phones melting down, even the mayor's office issuing a hasty investigation. Jenna's anonymous tip corroborated it all, her cowardice finally flipping to conscience. They cuffed me gentle, almost apologetic, as the medics swarmed Tommy. Shoulder stitched in the ambulance. I rode with him to Northwestern Memorial, the ER a fluorescent limbo of beeps and bleach. You saved me, kid, I murmured, his hand limp in mine. He managed a weak thumbs up, then scribbled on a napkin. You taught me words matter, even silent ones. The aftermath was a media circus, Dateline specials, op-eds and the Trib debating, was it justice or vigilantism? Mark's empire crumbled. Carla fled to Mexico with pilfered cash. The board resigned en masse. Lincoln High got a state overhaul with actual funding. Jenna? She turned state's evidence, got probation and a one-way ticket to NA meetings in Milwaukee. Me? Charges dropped to manslaughter with a slap. Community service teaching coding to juvie kids. Ironic full circle. But the twist? The real gut punch that kept therapists billing and barflies debating late into the night? Tommy wasn't mute by accident. Weeks later, in a quiet session with his shrink, court-mandated, mine too, he spoke. First time in 4 years, voice a rusty whisper like gravel in a tin can. I chose silence, Miss Harper. After the invasion, words got my mom killed. Lies from her boyfriend. But you? Your stories. They made me want to fight back. Without saying shit. Chose silence. Not trauma's cage, but armor. He'd played us all. Me, Mark, the system. Feigning helplessness to gather intel, hack the cracks, become the unseen avenger. And in saving me, he'd saved himself, breaking his vow for one irreversible act that crashed through the vent, the laptop lob. Hero? Vigilante? Or just a kid who'd learned revenge's double edge? We never talked about the grave, Jenna's half-dug tomb, the dirt I'd washed from my nails. She vanished after trial, rumors of a gallery show in Brooklyn, painting abstracts of suffocation. Mark's funeral was closed casket, attended by sycophants in ill-fitting suits, whispering about troubled genius. I didn't go. Instead, I stood on Lake Michigan's shore at dawn, waves gnawing the breakwater like doubts, Tommy beside me sketching the horizon. Was it worth it? He asked, voice gaining strength, the wind carrying it like a confession. I thought of the betrayal's layers, Mark's skim, Jenna's sellout, my own blind complicity. Taking the hit-and-run fall because love's a hell of a drug, sweeter than truth. The revenge? It polarized everything. Pundits split on whether I'd liberated or destroyed, kids at Lincoln hailing me as anti-hero while parents clutched pearls. No one's hands clean. Mine bloodied by the shovel, Tommy's by the hack. Even Mark's in death a martyr to his own hubris. Worth it, I echoed, salt spray stinging my scar. Hell if I know, but it was ours. He nodded, tearing the sketch free, a horizon split by lightning, 2 figures back-to-back against the storm. We walked into the city then, Chicago's pulse syncing with ours, flawed, fierce, unapologetic. Redemption? Maybe not. But in the gray dawn of America, where betrayal's the national pastime and silence a superpower, we'd carved our story, one twist at a time, leaving the debate to the survivors.